reality. And I also want to thank our participants for joining in. So most of you might be wondering what this is about. So our theme is beyond policy to reality. I'm sure most of you think this is a one-off thing, but this is a series of events that we'll keep having along the year. So we have different legal frameworks that we aim to educate each one of you. So as the Amazon Leadership Initiative, we realize that there are so many legal frameworks and instruments that have been implemented, and most of our countries have ratified these, meaning that they've adopted them. But then, in the actual sense, most of the young women and girls are unaware of these instruments. They don't know how these instruments are going to protect them. They don't even know where to start from. So most of you, like recently, that was 2 months ago, the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls was adopted. But I bet majority of us in here don't really understand what this is. Most of us saw a few people that are educated with these things sharing it on their statuses, but it keeps going on. I'm sure by the end of the year, it will go quiet and maybe just a few people will be aware of this. Maybe just by show of hands, people that are aware or a bit knowledgeable about this can raise their hands in the chat. So as the Amazon Leadership Initiative, our aim is to educate young women and girls on what these legal frameworks are and what these frameworks, on how these frameworks can help you out. So we have a series of events. So our first event will have, which is this one, the African Union Convention on Ending Violence, Women and Girls. The next one will be on the Maputo Protocol, and the rest of the series will be announced as time goes by. So at the end of this event, we just don't want you guys to walk by and just become knowledgeable about what this convention or other these instruments are about. But we hope that you can step out there and actually educate others, advocate, so that some of these instruments can actually be implemented, because we are the ones that hold our governments accountable. So once we have this knowledge, we'll be able to step out there and see how we can use it. So I'll allow my colleague Nurat to share on the other part of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Exilda. Yes. So I hope you've understood from where we're coming from, with us wanting to, take young girls and women like ourselves through this series of women and girls rights. We want everyone to be encouraged as a young woman to just find your space, to understand these legal frameworks and instruments, and so that you can identify your role in the implementation for it, in the advocacy for it. So as Exilda's mentioned, we plan to have a series of this event. We'll communicate when next we are having the next session. But what we expect everyone to get from, or rather to understand, to take away from this series you're doing, is that we want to have a call to action to empower young women and girls on their rights first off, because most of these instruments, based on the fact that they were made by the African people for the African people, they speak so much to our own rights. So we want to fully understand and just have a call to action. We want everyone to understand, what can I do in my own small or big way to ensure that other girls in my community, in my village, in my family understand and know their rights. We also want to increase awareness among young women and girls on their rights and these legal frameworks, because for example, Maputo Protocol is known as one of the most forward-looking legal instrument in terms of the African people, especially the African woman. It contains, things like FGM. FGM may not be quite a matter maybe in other parts of the world, but in Africa it is a matter. And it's only in the Maputo Protocol where, these things are mentioned, and there are legal frameworks on how to go about, for example, criminalizing FGM and early and child marriages. So we want everyone to be aware on how they can stand in for their rights. For example, when you go to court, what instrument, or rather what law, will be used so that you can find your justice. Apart from having a call to action and creating an awareness among young women and girls, We also want people to have an increased knowledge of the available legal frameworks and social support mechanisms for survivors of GBV. I know that in the recent past, there has been a rise of, for example, femicide in Kenya and also in South Africa. And I know in other parts of the world as well, for example, in Sierra Leone, issues on FGM and maybe child marriages, all these things are GBV, and we want girls to start naming them as they are so that we can start healing and so that we can start the process of, getting justice for, all African women and girls. So we want to just have every woman and girl to have that increased knowledge of these legal frameworks, that they are available and they can be used to protect women and girls and survivors of gender-based violence. And lastly, we also want to strengthen youth advocacy on matters gender equality and justice. As Lemo had mentioned, TheALI, our mandate and our goal, everything that we do is based on aspiration 6 of the AU agenda, which simply put is looking for we are envisioning a world where gender equality is in all spheres of life, and also women and girls and children are empowered, whereby we are building an Africa for the Africa we want is built by Africans themselves, and using the potential that women and girls have. So we want to strengthen youth advocacy on matter gender equality and gender justice, so that everyone sees, the part that they play in all these matters. So to do all this, we'll be mobilizing resources. We'll be trying to, encourage you also to join. So we want to overall promote gender equality. So whenever we call you for this series, please show up. And wherever there is a call to action, like we want to do something in our small ways in our communities, or even just posting about something to do with all these legal frameworks on your WhatsApp status so that other people would know, please go ahead and do that and just help us to continue promoting gender equality. Yeah, so I hope you've understood how this series is going to work and how it's going to empower all of us in terms of our advocacy. And we hope to see you in the other parts of this series. Thank you very much, and back to you, Chanda.
Thank you so much, Narat. You look gorgeous, by the way. Can I please get some emojis in the chat box just to show that you are present, you're here, and you're participating? We have 35 of you guys. Please let me see in the chat box. Zintle, thank you. Sboo, thank you. Thank you. Now let's get into the heart of tonight's conversation. What exactly is the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls? Where did it come from? Why was it adopted? And what does it mean for us on the ground? To guide us through this is the phenomenal Miss Rakhta Al-Shalodi. Please, if I butcher your name, do come for me. I give you, I give you permission. Who is the North Africa representative for the GIMAC Young Women Network. Yes, she has a very strong background in youth engagement and policy advocacy. She has consistently championed the rights of women and girls at both national and continental levels. Ragda is particularly passionate about ensuring that young women across Africa are meaningfully included in, political processes, especially those related to, gender-based violence, peace building, and governance. Whew. Guys, she's worked closely with the African Union and other regional bodies to make sure policies reflect the real lived experiences of girls on the ground. Whether she's facilitating grassroots dialogues or representing North African youth on global platforms, Ragda brings both heart and strategy to everything she does. Now let's welcome Ms. Rakta.
Thank you.
A round of applause, guys. A round of applause.
I've been seeing the applause on the chat. Thank you so much for your amazing introduction. And it's really nice to meet you and the team, Shandada. Please let me know if you all can hear me and the internet is working accurately.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you. So good
You're more
evening,
than welcome.
everyone. And thank you so much for the Amazon Leadership Initiative for hosting this timely and vital discussion. My name is Ragda Chaloudi. I'm the North Africa representative for GMAC, Young Women Network, for those who are familiar with. I'm also the founder for the Narratives for Development, where it's a platform bringing media and policy to tell stories that matter. Today, I'm honored to speak about the African Union Convention ending violence against women and girls, what it is, where it comes from, why it matters, and how we, especially young people and women's right advocate, must carry it forward from the policy part to the practice part. So let's begin with what the convention is. I'm gonna give like an overview, and then after that, I will share some presentation for more details. So the African Union Convention Ending Violence Against Women and Girls is the first continental-wide legally binding instrument solely focused on eradicating all forms of violence against women and girls in Africa. It builds on the Maputo Protocol and other frameworks, but unlike those, it centers on violence as a systematic, legal, and social and political issue. One that needs a coordinated action across borders and institutions. Its origin lies in the decades of the grassroots advocacy. Women movements and civil rights societies and organizations such as GMAC, SUWAR, and all the grassroots gender organization and others pushed the African Union to go beyond the broad frameworks. Their work made it clear existing treaties were too general and the implementation was too weak. So we needed a targeted, enforceable treaty to tackle the violence against women head on. And in 2022, the AU responded, and then recently the AU Convention was born. So congratulations to all of us. So why is this convention important, or why it matters, and why it matters to us as African women and girls? Because violence against women and girls is not just a personal or a cultural, it's a systematic barrier to Africa's development, whether it's intimate partner violence or child marriage or economic exclusion, education abuse or online abuse. These violations of right, dignity, and our shared potential, and I mean, it's an abuse for our shared potential as African women and girls. They undermine education, leadership, peace, health, and all sources of development. The convention is not just symbolic, it's practical. So it obligates states to pass protective laws, support survivors, train law enforcement, collect disaggregated data, and I'll go forward with more details. This convention, it implement and report the progress. It makes gender-based violence as a state responsibility, which is really important and as a key. And yet, adoption is just the beginning. So we need also, as we congratulate ourselves with the adoption, we're happy, but we need to remember that it's the beginning. For this convention to have impact, young people, especially young women, must be at the heart of its monitoring, storytelling, and implementation. And this part I've been working closely on, that how we transfer everything into storytelling. And also we must hold governments into accountable. Everyone has responsibility. It's not a matter of this is the African Union Convention or this is the international organization or like African organization government level. No, we have the responsibility for holding our government responsible for that because we have this structure right now. So we must hold the governments accountable. We need to amplify the survivor's voice and ensure no one is left behind. So in the next few minutes, I want to walk you through the structure and the content of the AU Convention using some slides and speak about what it means for your work. Every one of you, whether you are an advocate or an NGO or a policymaker or only a concerned young woman. So please allow me to share my screen. to the host, because I'm going to share the presentation. Hello? I just want the host to allow me to share my presentation. Thank you. Okay, just taking a few minutes to be uploaded. Please bear with me. Okay, I think it's shared. Please let me know all if you can see my screen, any reaction or something that I know.
Go ahead, Ragda, we can see it. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, so as we said, this is, okay, 1 second. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's now unpack the convention. I'm gonna go back again. Yes, so let's unpack the AU Convention on Violence Against Women. So this presentation basically unpacks what the Convention Against Women on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, what it is and how it was developed and how it strengthened the existing mechanism, because it's not a separate mechanism, it's strengthening the current mechanisms and the past mechanisms as well. We will explore the advocacy behind it and what the opportunity lie ahead, particularly for youth and community engagement. So let's start why this convention is urgent. Over the past, why this convention is urgent, we need to address the GBV, this different forms of GBV. For instance, we have over 44% of women report experiencing intimate partner violence in Africa. And more than 40% of African women aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical or sexual violence. This is not occasional, it's widespread and it's persistent. And also we have other type, which is also like, these are the dominant formats, perhaps the most devastating. Africa has the highest femicide rate globally. This crisis worsened during the COVID pandemic, which intensified isolation, economic pressure, and impunity. Those are not just statistics, they are people, lives, young women like ourselves, family, and futures. So ending violence is not a luxury by now, it's a necessity for development and justice. So the original responses to the GBV, allow me to just go back. Okay, so the original responses to the GBV, the convention did not emerge in vacuum. It builds on series of regional responses. One important milestone was the African Union's Men's Conference on Positive Masculinity, and here the positive men's rule appear as a space where male leaders committed to ending GBV. That conference has helped the spark on drafting this AU convention. It's the development was inclusive. Their development was inclusive. There were consultations across Africa with women leaders, youth traditional leaders, religious voices, private sector and civil society, and academia as well. So advocacy campaigns like Spotlight Initiative, Silencing the Guns, that we worked on at the African Union Youth Division, and 16 Days of Activism also created this political momentum. The convention is the culmination of all the years of mobilization by survivors, communities, and movement. Okay, so why is this convention important? So why we need this convention? It's simple answers, because while the framework like the CEDAW, like the Maputo Protocol exists, violence was not addressed deeply and comprehensively enough. And it's not addressed enough. The existing tools lacked enforceability and clarity. So this AU Convention of Ending Violence Against Women and Youth brings a clear, focused, legally binding mechanism that fills those gaps. Allow me to share the screen. Okay, so what's new in this convention? What stand out in these features? I'm going to put different points and then we can share this slide so for more details, but I'm going to give overview. So what makes this convention different is that first, it adopts a comprehensive definition of violence, including emerging forms such as the online harassment, the economic violence, the violence against women in politics, which is something new or for those who are working in the politics now, in the politics sphere. It also places the legal obligation on states to prevent, protect, prosecute, and provide services, which I call them the 4 Ps. And let's go back. It explicitly mentioned groups that face intersecting discrimination, such as refugees and LGBT with women and disabilities. So these are intersectional forms of disability or intersection forms of discrimination that brings together, that the AU is bringing them together, and critically include the mechanism for monitoring and enforcement, which also this is different from the other, I would say, documents, that this has a monitoring and enforcement mechanism. People can hold the government accountable, meaning the government must report and can be held accountable for this. So these are, in brief, why this convention is different and what's new in this convention. Okay, key provisions on prevention and protection. Let's look briefly on some preventions. Allow me to know if you still see my screen.
Yes, we do. We still can
Okay.
see the screen. Yes.
Okay, great. So let me just share some key provisions before we end up to this. So basically, let's look briefly on some key points like prevention. States must integrate anti-GBV measures in the education system to promote positive masculinity and train professionals in the justice and health sector. And the protection is the convention calls for safe spaces, shelters, and psychological support, economic empowerment for survivors. And these are the prevention and the protection type of this across the document. Also, another key prevention is justice and accountability. On the legal side, states are required to criminalize all forms of gender-based violence, eliminate barriers to access justice like stigma, cost, and language, establish specialized courts or procedures for GBV cases, and collect sex-aggregated data to track trends and policy impact. This creates real tool for change. It's not just the promises on paper, and this is why we need to invest our efforts to turn these promises real into implementation. So what are the opportunities for youth and civil society? So what you can do is, as a youth advocate, okay, I have my screen a little bit moving. Okay, so what you can do is, as youth advocate, you can actually monitor the government compliance. As storyteller, we need to raise the awareness about the convention in ways that reach people emotionally and culturally. As community leaders, we can help shape the national law and the programs by bringing grassroots voices into policy spaces. And we can do on different sectors, on different levels, that can be in health, in education, in different fields of development, not only the policy table as a policy table, but every forum that advocate for a policy change. And also as academics and researchers, we can fill the data gaps in the document, success stories and challenges, and what changed, and other success stories, and so on and so forth. So let me end this with saying that this adoption of the AU Convention was a victory, but the real battle actually begins now. We must push for the ratification, domestication, and enforcement in every country. We must translate the legal text into real protections, and we must do so together. So advocates, allies, change makers, NGOs, and we all should work together for this convention. And what I think also is different, that it connects all these sources of people working together on the same goal. So we have this AU Convention bringing together all the forms that we all work on as different women's rights advocates. So the future of African women and girls depends on what we do in this convention, I would say, and I'm not exaggerating saying that, not just what it says, but what it changes. So to conclude, the African Union Convention Ending Violence Against Women and Girls is historic, but also the power lies in its implementation. So we can't stop here. What we must do is that keep the pressure for the ratification across all the African countries. We need to push for budgeting, and this is important part for the legal reform, and also ensure that no survivor is left without resource, protection, or justice. So let's not let this be just another document, and let's be our turning point, because we have been, all of you have been advocating for this. So don't leave it as a document. Don't advocate for another document. Do this a reality. So let's rise beyond the words and move policy to reality. And thank you so much. I hope you have a clearer view of the AU Convention by now, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Whew. Thank you so much, Rauta. You know what? I think we all felt that because you're right, you know? You said that violence isn't abstract, it's personal, it's political, it's historical. And the fact that this convention was shaped, you know, through consultation from survivors to traditional leaders, whew, it, you know what, it makes it, I truly believe that it won't just be a document, but a mirror of, you know, our collective struggle and hope. What really stayed with me is that ending violence is not a luxury, it's a necessity, you know, because that's the heart of it, to be honest. It's not about survival, you know. I mean, no, I'm sorry. It's about survival. It's about justice and accountability. Thank you so much. I really hope that you guys are actually listening into this. Thank you so much, Ms. Ragda. That was very insightful. Um, Now, as we're building onto that energy, let's dive into the why of this convention, you know, through the lens of young people and movement building. What does this convention mean for us? Not in terms of policy, but in real-time action. But before I do that, do we have any questions for Ms. Ragda? Any questions? If you have any questions, please um, type them in the chat box. I'll give you 2 minutes max for you to do that. Any questions? Any questions, guys? Okay, so there are no questions. Just give me a thumbs up if you don't have any questions. I guess there are no questions. Our next speaker is Miss Belisuma Worku. Ms. Belisuma Worku is a passionate and detail-orientated Ethiopian professional who currently serves as the Youth Engagement Officer for the She Leads Pan-African Program and Women, Peace and Security Projects at Plan International Africans Union Liaison Office. Belisuma is all about amplifying the voices and leadership of girls and young women across Africa. She's worked with the AU Commission and global partners to make sure youth aren't just at the table, but they are shaping the agenda. She led a continent-wide youth consultation to support AU Convention on ending violence against women and girls. And she is definitely proof that young, focused African leadership is here and it's thriving. Please welcome Ms. Belisuma. The floor is yours, Ms. Belisuma.
Thank you for the introduction, Madam Moderator. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to apologize for keeping my camera off. I'm experiencing a bit of connectivity issue and want to ensure the audio remains clear. I hope that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hello?
Okay, thank you so much. Hello.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm back. So my dear colleague Ragda from GMAC has already unpacked the convention beautifully and in great detail. So I won't take you into much details, and I'll try to make my intervention complementary to hers. So if you hear any repetitions, please bear with me. It only shows how aligned we are. So on what this convention means to us young people and how our voices, lived realities, and recommendations have been meaningfully reflected in it. So last year in August, I had the opportunity to co-lead the coordination of a continent-wide youth and adolescent consultation on the convention in collaboration with UN agencies and CSO organizations. Over 600 young people and adolescents from across the continent participated, representing diverse backgrounds and communities. And I can proudly say that the perspectives of youth, especially girls and young women, were intentionally integrated into the development of a legally binding instrument focused on ending violence, which we now call the AU-CEVAWG Convention. So one of the strongest calls by young people was for the recognition of tech-facilitated gender-based violence. As we all know, for many young women, online spaces are just as unsafe as physical ones. And violence in physical spaces is usually translated online, and we have very few accountability mechanisms for online GBV in Africa. So this issue had been invisible in many existing policy frameworks, but now the AU Convention has explicitly recognized violence in cyberspaces, and it has been mainstreamed throughout the convention's provision, from prevention to accountability. And then young people also, during the consultation, further raised urgent concerns about the unique forms of violence facing girls and young women, especially those who are internally displaced due to conflict, climate crisis, or political instability. So their call for comprehensive social protection systems for these vulnerable groups was not only heard, but it was embedded in the convention's provisions. And moreover, youth advocated strongly for preventive measures that reject the misuse of traditional or religious norms to justify violence. So, like the recommendation was clearly reflected in the convention, which now states that no custom, traditional, or religious considerations are invoked to justify violence against women and girls in Article 10. Moreover, young people also highlighted the need for media, as well as social media platforms, to take responsibility in raising awareness and shifting harmful narratives, and for digital safety and accountability mechanisms to be integrated as well. And these elements are also now woven throughout the convention. And finally, the call for gender-responsive reporting procedures met consistently by youth during consultations was taken very seriously. The convention now calls for mechanisms that are survivor-centered, inclusive, and sensitive to the needs of all women and girls, including those with disabilities and those from marginalized communities. So in essence, the convention is not only a policy outcome, it's a reflection of the power of youth advocacy. And it really shows what is possible when young people are not just consulted, but are true co-creators of change. So now what can young people do? But before that, I would want to take you through the journey of the convention from adoption to action in a brief way. So now that the convention has been adopted by the AU Assembly, it would move now to AU member states who are expected to sign it, because signing would signal a country's interest and intent to ratify. Once signed, each country would undertake a process of reviewing the convention against its existing both national laws, policies, and frameworks. And this is done to ensure that alignment and understand what change might be needed. So after the national review, the convention must now be ratified by the national parliament or any legislative body within the country or within the member state. And this would be like a formal approver that commits the country to the convention's principles, provisions, and obligations. And once ratified, the government must now submit formal documentation, which we call AU instruments of ratification. and it has to be submitted to the African Union Commission. And it's only then is a country officially counted as having ratified the convention. And this final steps involve, and then after that, the final step would involve adapting the convention's provisions into national laws, policies, it could be action plans. And after that, we will discuss the real implementation. So now we know about its process. We are entering like a critical window of opportunity, and young people don't need to wait for permission to act, because young people can lead now, and here is how. So first, we can start by educating ourselves and our community. We can start by understanding the convention, know what it says, especially the provisions that reflect youth voices. It could be like organizing learning circles, peer-to-peer sessions, or even webinars like this to help others grasp what's in the convention and why it matters. And then what we can do is also like learn the ratification process in each of our countries, because every country has its own pathway to ratifying international instruments or legal frameworks. So let's take time to understand how our government processes such instruments and agreements. We can start from understanding who leads this process. Is it the Ministry of Gender? Is it Foreign Affairs or Parliament? Which specific parliamentary committees handle it? Because knowing the steps means knowing where to apply pressure and when. And then thirdly, we can mobilize and organize. What I mean in that is we can build or join youth-led coalitions and movements that are committed to advocating for the ratification of the convention. And if a coalition does not exist yet in your country, you can start one. You can also collaborate with CSO organizations who are already leading these efforts, such as GMAG and other organizations. And then thirdly, we can use our voice and platforms, whether it's online or offline, to inform and engage others. You can host community dialogues, even create TikToks or Instagram reels, or organize cool events for those who are adolescent girls. We can speak in spaces where the convention is not yet known, so that we can help people understand how this convention will protect women and girls and why it must be ratified now. And another thing that we could do is, I know it might seem like political, but we can write to or meet with members of parliament or ministries of gender or youth. And if those are not reachable, try to reach youth parliamentarians and national youth councils. When you meet them in the corridors and different big conferences, ask them, what is our government's plan to ratify the convention? You can share youth statements to demonstrate public interest so that you can keep them accountable. And then lastly, like my dear colleague Ragda mentioned, adoption is only one step. So I would encourage all of us to stay involved in the follow-up. Let's continue to monitor our government's commitments. Let's advocate for budgeting, capacity building, and localization. Use our platforms to celebrate wins, because recently Djibouti has become the first country to sign the convention. And let's also call out delays. So before I wrap up, you may have noticed me switching between we and young people throughout my talk. That's not because I'm not just speaking in my professional role. As per the African Union definition, I consider myself a young woman advocate. So we young people have already shown the power of our voice. Through our bold recommendations and lived experiences, I believe we helped shape this convention. But now that it has been adopted, the real work begins. So I'll leave you all with a bit of a homework. Please ask yourself, what role can I play as a young person to push for the ratification of this convention, and ensure its promises become real change for girls and young women in my community? Because this convention is more than a document, it's a promise. And it's up to us to make sure that this promise is kept. And most importantly, we have to make sure that it doesn't remain just words on paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Belisuma. Wow. I think we can all agree that this was deeply affirming. just hearing that young women were heard and integrated into the making of this convention. I mean, that's power, you know. But I think what struck me most was the recognition of, what she mentioned, the tech facilitated violence. You know, we do know that violence doesn't just end at the doorstep. It follows us into the DMs, our timelines, and our silence. So to see digital safety, finally named and claimed in policy, it is long overdue and incredibly validating. And there's a point you also mentioned where you said, young people refusing to, the misuse of culture and religion as excuses for violence. Uh, that was new for me, but that gave me chills. You know, we as young people were demanding protection, and that is what we want. Not to take up most of the time. Do we have any more questions, guys? Do you have questions? Do we have questions? I'm giving you 2 minutes just to write your questions into the chat box. Any questions? All right. Okay, there's a question by Sokana Mpava. She said, excuse me if this was clarified, but is Djibouti the only country that signed the convention?
Can I respond?
Yes, you may.
Yes. So like I mentioned, since the convention has been adopted recently in February 2025 during the AU summit, only Djibouti has signed the convention. I think it happened before 3 weeks. And we're hoping other countries will also follow the same steps.
Okay. And thank you so much for that. I hope it answered your question. So I do have a question as well. What are the biggest challenges faced in the adoption, rectification, domestication, and implementation of these legal frameworks for women rights? Are you there? I think we lost her.
Hello, good evening.
I think we lost her. Oh, she's here.
Oh, is the question for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think when it comes to challenge, I would say the first one would be political will and prioritization, because
Yes.
some governments may lack the political will to prioritize gender-based violence,
Yes.
or may deprioritize, sorry for my word, women and girls' rights in favor of other national interests.
Yeah.
And sometimes even leadership change can disrupt progress or stall ratification. And then the challenge with ratification, it often involves complex procedures. Like I mentioned, there is the long process within the legal reviews, cabinet approvals, even parliamentary debates, which can take a long time, especially in countries with slow bureaucratic systems. And then some provisions in the convention may conflict with existing national laws, or it might be perceived to challenge cultural or religious norms, making alignment difficult because, as we've seen with the anti-FGM law in Gambia, such kind of conflicting national laws or traditions make the ratification process difficult. And then also low public awareness about the convention can mean less civil society or youth pressure on governments to ratify or implement it. And then even when political will exists, implementation requires funding, training, and institutional strengthening, which many countries might lack. And then finally, without strong systems to track progress and hold duty bearers accountable, implementation may be inconsistent because people say we have Maputo Protocol, why they need to have a new convention, because we've not been able to implement fully the Maputo Protocol. So sometimes weak accountability and monitoring mechanisms is also a reason and challenge. I hope I responded to your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much, Pilasuma. We really appreciate that. Let's continue, guys. It's one thing to know your rights, and it's another to see them being respected. What legal obligations do governments have under this convention, and how do we hold them accountable? For that, we have Ms. Gladys Plikagat. She is the executive director of the Baringo Indigenous People Organization. Gladys is a fierce climate change ambassador and a powerful advocate for gender equity and indigenous rights in Kenya. With over 8 years of experience, she translates policy into action, especially for the marginalized and indigenous communities. She's worked on enforcement of the Maputo Protocol and this AU convention, led rural women's advocacy through her Rural Women Cultivating Change program, and represented grassroots voices at high-level forums like Comesa and FemNet. She is quite literally walking the talk. Gladys, please take us there.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening,
it is
Gladys.
a
How are
great
you
honor and
doing?
encouragement that. Thank you so much. I'm doing well. I'm Gladys Plagad, and I'm a proud young Endorois woman from Baringo in Kenya. Endorois community is an indigenous community that resides in the landscape of Lake Bogoria in Kenya. And I'm also a founder and team leader of Baringo Indigenous Peoples Organization. This is a youth-led organization that is purely young women-led organization. And I'm deeply humbled to be part of this incredible discussion with such strong, inspiring women who are united in the quest to build a world where no woman or girls are left behind. As a young indigenous woman, I'm privileged to be here today, which is a very rare opportunity for a young woman like me. And I have witnessed the struggles and lived experience of young indigenous women and girls in our community. It is also a reality that are shaped by not only gender equality, but also by patriarchy and also climate, community, and cultural climate change impacts, and I mean cultural norms that has caused economic marginalization. However, we also have a reality whereby resilience have been thriving, and we've also seen indigenous women rise to challenges and led to change, even in a face of diversity. And in Baringo Indigenous Peoples Organization, we majorly focus on empowering young women and girls, especially those who are gender-based survivors and those who have fallen in child marriages that are mainly caused by we have intercommunity conflicts, and those people have got to being displaced by the swelling of Lake Bogoria. So they have ended up being displaced and they find themselves falling into child marriages. So, and we've just tried to make them try to engage in entrepreneurial skills, financial literacy, and more so in agroecology so that they can be dependent and try to make things work in life. And also tools that are critical in helping our women break this systematic and gender things that that get themselves in stereotypes of being a young girl. and cycles of violence, poverty, and also marginalizations. And my remarks today focus on the legal obligations for and to African women and girls under this convention, particularly in ensuring that no woman is left behind or girls, including those in rural and indigenous conflict areas and marginalized communities. This convention that was adopted early this year, and it has also built up and strengthened earlier frameworks like the Maputo Protocol, aligning them with the realities of today and also increase the sexual and gender-based violence, harmful practices, and their in my community, there have been a very high prevalence of FGM and GBV. The convention is binding. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Oh, thank you. Because I understand it is quite training, so so the convention is also binding once ratified, which means states that adopt it are under international legal obligations to transform its principles into national law. And key legal obligations include prevention of violence, which states that enforcing comprehensive laws that criminalize all forms of GBV, and also sexual violences, femicide, child marriage, and FGM. Also, protection of rights. The convention obligates states to ensure access to justice and remedies of survivors of violence. Prosecution and accountability. Member states must investigate and prosecute and punish perpetrators of gender-based violence. Provision of services, that is legal obligation, extends to guaranteeing survival-centered services, and also inclusion and participation. That is ensuring that young women and girls, particularly from marginalized communities, participate meaningfully in making decisions that has been excluded in many years in making policy developments. Leaving no one behind, unpacking the principle with both Agenda 2063 and SDGs in this convention. Leaving no one behind translates to intersectional legal protection. Laws must account for overlapping vulnerabilities such as poverty, geographic ethnicity, and also gender identity. For instance, legal systems should recognize land rights for indigenous women. Ever since I was born, I understand that in my community, no woman should own a land. And also decentralized justice. Legal access must go beyond capital cities and be available for grassroots and remote communities. Young women and legal literacies. Also, there is also a justice must work. Governments must find the people who hurt women and girls, take them to court and give justice. Justice close to home. Don't keep justice just in cities and not reaching remote areas like my village, whereby no one even understands the convention itself. Teaching young girls their rights, and many countries still haven't ratified the convention. Cultural practices still silence survivors, and being that they believe when you are beaten, like in my community, they believe when you are beaten, it is sometimes a right for a husband to discipline a wife, which is not a right thing. Data is missing. We don't know how bad things are in some places. Courts and systems are also underfunded or too far away. Where the hope lives, and also civil societies, indigenous youth, women groups should be the watchdogs, should speak up, and should report as demanded. Legal action matters. We can go to court and push for land rights, inheritance justice, and protections. Pan-African unity. Youth from Kenya to Mali to South Sudan, etc. can build a movement, one voice, one drum. Many arts come together and we find a solution. This convention is not just a law, it is a promise that no woman or a girl will be invisible. Let that Endorese girl who is far away from finding justice, who walks 3 hours to school, whereby a young woman can walk distance to give birth. Someone like a young woman who lives in Southern Sudan, a refugee woman, build a new life. The disabled girl maybe in Mali trying to speak out. That rural teenage mother in Zambia. Let them all be seen, heard, or respected and protected. Because justice is not how we treat the strong, but how we protect the vulnerable. And let us all ensure that Indigenous women come together and being recognized, because the true voice of Indigenous woman or a rural woman cannot be heard by someone in town or will not understand what they are going through. Back to you, Chandada.
Wow, thank you so much, Gladys. You really brought us straight to the front lines, where, what is the word? Where resilience isn't a buzzword. Wow, that, thank you so much. You talked about your emphasis on inclusion, that no woman, no girl should be left behind, especially those in conflict zones, rural areas, or living through layered injustice. This, guys, it's a powerful call to move from policy to protection, from words to real lived justice. So thank you so much. If we have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Any questions? No questions. This is a question for Gladys. What gives you hope about the future of gender equality on the continent, especially in the context of such legal instruments?
Come on again.
Pardon?
I never had you. Well, kindly come on again.
My question was, and this doesn't just go to you, it can go to all our speakers, Belisuma, Ragda, and you as well. What gives you hope about the future of gender equality on the continent, especially in the context of such legal instruments?
The future of gender equality on the continent, especially in the context of legal instruments. One, on the positive outlook. For example, the Maputo Protocol provides a comprehensive legal framework that guarantees women and girls rights to dignity. Also, growing ratification. As of now, over 40 of the 55 AU member states, I think they have ratified the protocol, showing there is an increase of political will. And also, there is challenges of implementation gaps. Many countries lack in full implementing the protocol due to lack of resources, political will, and also cultural resistance. And I believe for the future directions, civil societies and EU mechanisms must ensure that countries report progress and implement recommendations. And also in education and economic empowerment, investing in girls' education and women's entrepreneurship will drive long-term change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know if Ragda and Belisuma would love to add.
Yeah, I'd be happy to add.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So I think what gives me hope about the future in gender equality is the unstoppable leadership of young African women. I'm also,
Mhm.
I'm always proud to hear about a new NGO, a new rural grassroots, a new initiative. So across the continent, I see young girls and women refusing to be silent. They are leading movements, building platforms, demanding justice, and holding institutions accountable, whether it's fighting harmful practice, pushing for legal reform, or innovating tech and shaping climate peace agendas. So these are really changing the narratives from the victim to the powerful agent. So I mean, this what made me the most hopeful for this convention, for the gender
Yeah.
agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You talked about adoption earlier on. I think what I want to understand, I think most girls in here would like to understand, like, what are the biggest challenges faced in the adoption, um, you know, in the adoption, rectification, domestication, and implementation of these legal frameworks for women's rights?
Yes, I was muted. So one of the biggest
Sorry.
challenges in the adoption of the legal framework, I'll just give a vague kind of like or general overview because every
Mm-hmm.
adoption has its, or like every legal framework has its own criteria and its own agenda. But one of the biggest challenges facing is the violence facing this agenda is the political will, actually. Many member states signed regional or continental agreement, but the delay of the ratification or implementation is the issue because the commitments require real structural change from reforming
Yeah.
law to funding survivors services or holding preparators accountable even within the state institution. Second thing, I think there's a challenge particularly in the patriarchy being deeply rooted in law, culture, and institutions. In some countries, discriminatory law exists and coexists within different kind of progressive framework. Even when good law are passed, harmful social norms are available. Weak enforcement and lack of access to justice make these legal framework ineffective. The third one is the coordination gap. So the gender-based violence legal framework are multi-sectoral framework. This require health, justice, education, law, and all law enforcement to work together. But often these sectors operate in separate. In some countries, I'm sure that countries, all the participants will relate somehow. It's different in specific countries, but also we all know that these organizations work in separate, so there's little integration or little accountability. Finally, I think the issue of civic space. In some countries, women's rights organizations are facing restrictions, funding cuts, or repression, especially young women. I wouldn't speak about that. It's a lot, you all know. And without them, the engine of change slows down. So yeah, resources, grassroots mobilization, inclusive monitoring must go hand in hand with these legal framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any examples you'd like to share of, successful policy translation into action, where the AU or other frameworks have been effectively implemented to protect women and girls?
Certainly. I mean, what comes to me now is I would say the Maputo plan of action for sexual and reproductive health and rights. Now we are building on it. I mean, it was also successful. So building on it,
Yes.
where it was to operationalize the commitment on reproductive rights, what makes it successful, that it didn't stay on paper as well. The AU worked with member states and UN agencies and civil society to implement the national strategies and monitor the progress to scale the services. By 2020, if I'm remembering accurately, several countries, including Rwanda, Ethiopia, Mozambique, had expanded the access of family planning, maternal health services, and HIV prevention, with measurable reductions in maternal mortality and greater access to its SRHR services, even for adolescents. So the success was driven by the clear timeline. There was also some reporting mechanism and collaboration with regional actors. It's a strong model in how continental commitment can drive the national action. This shows us the accountability and financing political will in regional frameworks such as the convention. The new convention can lead to real transformative change because it has more detailed, different forms of change and more helpful and up-to-date forms of violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Belisuma, please, if you have any, because that question was not directed to Ragda alone, it was directed to you as well. If you have any insights to share, please unmute. We'd be more than happy to hear from you.
I think I was also going to mention about the Maputo Protocol, since Ragda mentioned it. I wouldn't want to repeat it again. But then just to mention my hope for gender equality in Africa, I just wanted to say something about that. Because in a simple way, young people, they're not just clapping from the sidelines anymore. As we all see, they're grabbing the mic, they're rewriting the script and making sure gender equality is not just a buzzword, but a lived reality. They're stepping up, speaking out, and now they're even shaping policies like this convention. So if this momentum continues, I'm very hopeful that gender equality in Africa won't just be a dream. And honestly, with how loud and unstoppable young African women are becoming, I think the future should be a little nervous because we're coming for every space that once ignored us. Back to you, thanks.
Thank you. But I think one last question before we get to Salim's question. How best can we overcome the male? Oh, sorry. How best can we overcome the male misogynistic society? You know, as we push for equality and women and girls' rights. You know, yeah.
Ragda, do you want to come in before I do?
Will you please just repeat the question? My internet wasn't really connecting.
Oh yeah, this is the question. How best can we overcome the male? It's in the chat box. It disappeared. Where is it? Salim, can you please read the question because I can't find it, please?
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Okay.
My name is Salim. I wanted to ask, how best can we overcome the male misogynistic society as we push for equality and equality for women and girls' rights? Also, the second question is, most African cultures are anti-women, and how can we overcome them in our push for equality for women and girls?
Thank you.
Can I respond? Oh, okay.
Yes, you can go ahead, Belisuma.
Okay, I'll try to give a very brief response and then you can add the details. But my suggestion is I think we can overcome this deeply rooted misogynistic attitudes, I think, by starting with education and dialogue, especially with boys and men. Because when boys and men understand that gender equality benefits everyone and not just women and girls, I think they could become allies rather than obstacles. So change also comes when we challenge harmful norms at home, in schools, in media, and policy spaces. So I think one conversation at a time and one action at a time could help us overcome. Back to you, Ragda.
Thank you.
Salim. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Go on, please.
I really support what Belisuma just said. So one step by one time. I would also maybe add the need for mix. It's a mix of. I mean, first, thank you so much, Salim, for your attendance and for your question, because this is really important. It needs like a mix of courage, strategy, collective action. And we need to know, I mean, because we cannot disseminate like the patriarchal system without men actively challenging them from within it. So we need to shift the culture through conversation. We need to raise boys differently, as Bilsima just said. And we must disrupt the way of masculinity is taught, linking to dominate or control, entitlement. So we need to raise boys to value the empathy and emotional intelligence and gender equality as strength, not weakness. Also, we need to support women's leadership without ego. So men shouldn't give a space for women as a favors. So we need to recognize that it's a justice, not necessary for better decision making. This means stepping back when needed, listening more, and being led by women without defensiveness. Because this is really, I think this is common in all the African countries, internet and like in globally, but also it's most common in Africa, where we need to know that we need to understand that being led by women it's not defensive. It's nothing wrong with that. And also reclaiming culture. Culture is not static. Many pre-colonial African societies where had women positions in power. We must reclaim those historical framing and reframe the culture not as an obstacle. So culture, if we depend on culture, this is what culture said. No, culture said that women were leaders, and we have a lot of examples on that. So yeah, so let's use culture as resource for equality rooted in our dignity, not vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rafta. Salim, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Thank you so much. I know you guys have thoughts, reflections, so please don't hold back. Let's unpack this together. Please ask any questions. Unmute yourself if you're confident enough, or just put them in the chat box, please. Okay. A question here. How can small organizations like TheALI collaborate with the AU and Plan International in advocacy, especially when they lack the funding to reach out to marginalized communities? This question goes out to all our speakers.
Okay. So I think I can come in.
Yes.
Okay. So I think small organizations can still collaborate. I wouldn't want to call them small organizations because we all have big visions and missions. So I think first what we could do is I hope they would identify specific areas of expertise, or I'm sure they would have some unique contributions that these organizations can offer. So the AU really values specialized knowledge and even grassroots insights that can complement larger initiatives and even during the development of such kind of big legal frameworks. So, for example, let's say a small organization focusing on youth empowerment or gender equality might provide very vital perspectives or even data that are critical to AU projects. And then even small organizations, they can join coalitions or networks that are already have established relationships with the AU. So by being very strategic and working together with other organizations, it could be co-organizing an event that have stronger funding or capacity, so they can gain access to larger projects and contribute their expertise. That way, they can get the attention from the African Union as well as other big organizations. Which means this like attention can help them open doors for joint proposals and shared resources. And then lastly, these organizations, they can participate in AU meetings or even public consultations where the voice of grassroots organizations are very welcomed. So they can share their experiences and insights, be it through written submissions, policy briefs. So even if direct funding is not available, their contribution can influence AU discussions and priorities. So if financial resources are limited, your organization can offer in-kind support such as research, data, training, because the AU often values non-physical contribution as part of partnerships, especially when those contributions are aligned with its goal. And the AU and even Plan, they also offer grants and funding opportunities for CIS organizations, big or small. So you can apply for smaller funding opportunities or capacity building programs that are specific to your area of focus. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Oh my goodness, I was so sorry. Sorry about that. I had muted my mic. Salim asked a question. Um, he said the Ali program is really nice. How can men like me who are passionate in championing for women and girls' rights be onboarded into the program?
I wish to answer that question. Salim, thank you
Yes,
so much for
please.
joining us and asking your wonderful questions. So the Amazon Leadership Initiative is an initiative for young female leaders, and us working with young female leaders is a strategy on its own. Currently, we are not directly working with men, though they're welcomed in, our open sessions and everything, but TheALI specifically works with young female leaders. However, we are willing to, refer you to organizations that we know, like Men Engage, that solely work with men alone. So it's a strategy. Yeah. So we are happy for you to, keep engaging with us, maybe on social media. Whenever we have such sessions, please join and input any inputs you may have. We are happy to hear. We are happy to understand how men can be engaged in these processes. But for us, we have chosen this as a niche and as a strategy to just work with young female leaders. Salim, I hope that that settles that question. Thank you.
It has
You're saying that we
settled.
can count on you. Thank you so much, Salim. Back to you, Chanda.
Thank you guys for showing up with intention tonight. Um, this was just a reminder that, words only matter when they are backed up by action. I hope we carry this beyond the screen, into our schools, into our communities, our policies, and into our everyday lives. Thank you so much to our speakers for such an insightful session. We are truly grateful. And thank you to everyone who attended, and you, Salim, as well. We appreciate you that you got the opportunity just to share this time and space with us. Before we close, we would like to take a quick family photo. Um, because I'd love to believe that you guys are not just participants. You are part of something bigger and you are part of the Ali family. So please switch on your cameras. Let's take a pose because everything is just getting started. I can't see you guys. And I can't see myself as well. There we go. Sibusi, so Exilda. Hi guys, Grace. Family photo.
Guys, let's see your beautiful smiles. If you're able, please turn on your camera. Smile, everybody.
Yes.
Amazing. Let me take one more. Keep smiling. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great evening. Stay blessed, and let's continue to you know like our pages, stay engaged in all our pages. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. So please like, follow, share, and thank you so much for such a great evening. I hope you guys stay blessed. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Gladys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good evening.